Business Mike, episode 44.
The power of poetry is that everybody experiences it differently. There are no rules for what makes a great poem. Understanding it isn't just about metaphor or meter. Instead, a great poem is one that resonates with us, that challenges us, and that teaches us something about ourselves and the world that we live in. As Rita Dove says, if poetry doesn't affect you on some level that cannot be explained in words, then the poem hasn't done its job. Also known as, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. That's a little ad-lib there.
This week on Business Mike, poetry. My guest today is Beverley Nambozo. She's a Ugandan poet and the founder of the Babishai Niwe Foundation. In today's show, we'll chat about the significance of poetry in our society, as well as how to turn poetry into a business. All this and more next on Business Mike.
You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with inspiring entrepreneurs. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher Radio for a brand new episode every Monday.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Mike. My name is Daudi Mugabi and today I'm joined by Beverley. Beverley, why don't you start us off by briefly telling us about yourself and what you do?
Okay, I don't know if there's anything brief about that, but thank you, Daudi. I am a poet. I write a lot. I edit. I do a lot of children's training. I have a certified leadership certificate. I also am a long-distance swimmer. I love to swim. I'm a long-distance walker, and I'm passionate about life, about being creative. I'm a passionate reader. I watch a lot of good TV, mother, wife, and I live in Kampala currently.
Right, so you mentioned that you're a poet and a speaker. What exactly inspired you to become a poet in particular?
Well, it was more than inspiration. I think it was something that was thrust upon me when people realized that I have a gift. I love to create things. I love sound, musicality. And when you combine those as a young child, you realize it's going towards the poetic field. And so as a young child, my parents, schools I went to, I was encouraged in that trend. And so I always grew up writing and knowing how to define which words belonged in poems. And so I grew up in that. Making it as a career was a decision I made after my first child was born. I thought I would like to spend a few years with her, but also doing something I feel is more tangible and valuable for myself and others. And so I began a foundation called Babishai Niwe. By then, it was called Beverley Nambozo. And so I started this program, which was a competition promoting Ugandan women a few years ago. And it's grown much wider since then. So being a poet and investing in it as your career, you realize that this is a career that's going to be life-changing. I've decided, made a positive decision to do this, make a living out of it, pay school fees and rent and all that. And so it's grown a lot. So much, yes.
Tell us more about the foundation, Babishai Niwe. What exactly does it do? For instance, does it bring poets together and what do they benefit?
Yes, it brings poets together. There are a number of programs we run. One is an annual poetry competition for Africans. We award a cash prize to the winner of $1,000. We invite them for a festival in Kampala and other festivals around the country. For the top 10, they're involved in a mentorship program where for 6 months we get scholars and leading poets around the world to have a 6-month online feedback mechanism with them where they share their work, edit, recraft it to publishing status, and they discuss poetry and how they can evolve, because poetry is very subjective, very personal, so it's a very personal mentorship program. We also run a publishing program where we publish anthologies of poetry from Africans around the world. So we have 2 to our name so far, 1,000 Voices Rising and Boda Boda Anthem. This year we're going to produce a children's poetry anthology and also another one. So we'll have 4 by the end of this year. And in this program we have a children's toolkit called Poetrix, where we train young children. Our target is 4 to 12, but we sometimes go the older ones. We train them in creative reading, writing, listening, and speaking using poetic devices. So it's very creative. It's about being imaginative, being observant, being able to describe, articulate, building confidence, team building, allowing a child to reach their maximum potential by being, first of all, appreciating who they are, appreciating others, and being aware of the environment. And so we engage in that. And yes, I think I mentioned all. We have a new program that, well, I don't know if I can mention it yet, but we're trying to have a more inclusive education program to include children with special needs. And so we've met with a few directors of schools here, and we're also going to launch that later in the year, plus a program on radio, starting with Uganda, where we're going to target youth 18 to 25, speaking in spoken word form in the 4 major languages about things that affect them. Even the political decisions that people make when they're voting, education policies here, personal interests, and that's also something new we're doing.
Now, you mentioned that you decided to take poetry on as a career, and I'm sure there are people listening that are poets, but they're wondering how exactly it is that they can make money from poetry. Poetry is an art from the little that I know, so how do you earn or make a living from poetry?
Oh, you have to be extremely creative. And when I say extremely, you have to think of poetry outside just within the pages of a book and a microphone. It's far more. You have to realize that poetry has to extend to all fields, the corporate field, the medical field, all social services. And when you do that, you realize that you can extend poetry to lend a hand to different people, like how the military would lend a hand in providing security. You have to formulate poetry and think of it in a way as giving a service where you are paid in return. And so what we have done is we have created a service where we offer children a training in the Poetrix program, and the training involves building their confidence through creative reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and parents pay for that. So that's one way, but we have to become extremely creative and realize how important and how many roles poetry has. We have not even exhausted them, of course, but we just had to look at it in that way. Another way is when we publish these books, we also sell them as well. We also have the festival where people pay they pay fees to enter. That's a one-off program. We also do consultancies in terms of we use our poetic skills in being creative to offer consultancies in creativity, team building for organizations, and that brings in money. But then again, we see poetry outside just a publication and a spoken word form. So remove the microphone and the book and look at poetry as a universe, and then you'll be able to see how you can make a career out of it.
Actually, there's an audio clip that I have of Kanye West. He's obviously a successful rapper at the moment. And this clip is one of him when he's just 12 years old, reciting a poem for Martin Luther King. So I'm just going to let you have a listen and get your reactions afterwards.
My name is Kanye West, and my poem is His Name Means Love. A man who fought for freedom, a man who fought for equality. Those who were against him were too blind to see what this man was fighting for, so blacks, Hispanics, Jews, and Asians could put their foot in the door. Yes, we know that this man is great. That's why today we celebrate. And everyone lifts their voice and sings for a man who wanted freedom to reign. Martin Luther King is who I'm speaking of, a man whose name means love.
So that's Kanye West at age 12. And obviously, you could tell right from when he was someone young that he had a gift, which obviously is taken advantage of through his music and so on. What advice would you give for someone who's a poet that is just starting out? What places can they go to? You know, I'm someone that likes writing things down in my book. Where can I go? Which people can I meet? You mentioned there's a festival. Does it happen at a regular period? Are there places I can go that meet weekly and so on?
Well, it's hard to define what starting out means, but for those who are interested in knowing where the spaces are, our festival runs every August. The one this year is going to run from 24th to 26th at Indere Center in Kisasi. We're already in negotiations with the director, and we have a full laid out 3 day plan, we're going to have spoken word workshops, master classes, working with words, a whole children's segment. They're going to perform. They're going to have a panel presentation on poetry and demand accessibility to their poetry, which is why we'll have an anthology produced by then. We are going to have Ugandan women poets featuring their work. And we have a number of exciting Ugandan women poets who have registered for that. We'll also have a celebration of Song of Lawino, which was a book written by Okot Pabitek, and it's in its 50th anniversary this year since its first publication. So we're going to be celebrating that. There's a lot in store, keynote address by some scholars from Makerere University. And that's one, and people are welcome. It's 25,000 to attend the 3 days, and that includes meals. Our training program for young children 4 to 12 is mainly, well, with schools, but also in the holidays. And so if people want, I just refer them to the website now. You know, so www.babishai Niwe.com, and then they'll find the segments of Poetrix and the events we have. We have an events calendar and how they may sign up to join. But every holiday we try to do specific programs, sometimes meeting in people's homes, because parents are aware that their children spend more time receiving technology information instead of being creative on their own. And so we try to come up and alleviate that gap.
Right. Now, you've been in this industry for quite a while. What are some of the challenges that you've identified, and how are you trying to address a few of those?
Selling poetry. It's so hard to sell poetry to people who potentially could be very resourceful financially. But the interesting thing is when they come to an event and they hear the stories of change from people who have experienced what Babishai offers, then it's easier to market because they see the product of the people whose lives have changed from being a part of this, the workshops we do and the books we produced and the festivals we organize. But it's very difficult. Another thing is you get people trying to emulate what you're doing, and so sometimes you find people who do not have enough originality of their own, and so they try and do everything you're trying to do, put important dates with yours, and that's a challenge as well. But the good thing with that also, every challenge helps to become stronger and more creative. This year we set a very, very high standard for our festival. We started planning from last year in September, and we have got people who already bought their tickets, organized workshops, and I'm glad because people first told us we're planning too early, but you can never plan too early for this. And we already even started planning for 2017, 2018. So this challenge that comes, you realize, plan ahead always, a year, 2 years in advance. And we look forward to our 10th anniversary as well, which we're already planning for. Something else about poetry, to make it more inclusive, another challenge is people always feel it's too elitist and it's too booky. And so we're having a Poetry on the Mountain experience in June. We're going to Mount Renzori, not climbing to the top, but just the foothills. It's called Poetry on the Mountain, and we're going to experience a poetry session there. We're going to launch a book, and people recite poetry, and we'll have a barbecue on the foothills.
When will that be? That sounds interesting.
June 10th to 12th.
Okay.
So we're working with Uganda Travel Bureau, and that's on the website as well. It's called Poetry on the Mountain. It's the first of its kind in Uganda. I don't think I've seen it anywhere else in Africa, and we want to make it annual. So it's exciting. People are interested, they've registered. Those who are interested still is $355 per person, and you have 2 nights at Hotel Margarita, porter fees, transport to and from Kampala paid, and all the contingencies as well. And it's going to be exciting. We're looking forward. It's the first, and we want to make it annual. We're excited by it. So we try to make it creative, and so people realize how poetry is actually a place where they can feel comfortable.
Now, you've obviously written so many poems and listened to thousands more. Do you, by any chance, have a favorite poem, or at least one that touched you in a special way?
Yes, by the way, Emily Dickinson. She was one of the romantic poets of the 15th century. Her poem, I'm Nobody, Who Are You? And it really talks about, it's so relevant centuries after, about today, you know, how we all fight for the limelight and to be recognized in certain ways. We do things that may be underhand, but she's talking about the pleasures of actually being incognito, being unrecognizable, the freedom that is in not being recognized in society. And she compares it to someone who's always in the limelight and doesn't have a private life. And it's simple because it reflects what we're going through today. Simple but very profound.
I remember there was an interview with Barack Obama and Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes.
And Barack Obama asked Seinfeld if he meets as the being anonymous. That ability to walk into a store and nobody's bothering you, to walk with your kids in the park, things like that. That's something he can never have ever again.
Yes,
and he misses
true.
it. Because once it's gone, you don't get it back.
Yes, there's a freedom that comes with anonymity. And she explains it very well in the poem.
Right. Now, I just wanted to quickly touch on this book, 1,000 Voices Rising. How did you get the idea to write this book? Because it seems to be a combination of different poems from African poets.
Yes. That was our first anthology as the Babishai Niwe Foundation. And what happened is that we had so many poems in our data bank. Poems from all the winners of 5 years, from 2009 to 2013. We had poems from people who had asked us to edit, review. We had poems from people who had come to our spaces and shared. And we wanted the world to hear and read these poems. And so we thought, what better way than to anthologize at first and to start a publishing unit. And so whenever we'd travel or people would come to Uganda, important poets, we'd ask them, would you be willing to share your poetry in that? And they were all willing. Nobody said no. So some are published, unpublished. There are many new voices. And it was interesting. That's how the anthology came about. And that's how the title came about. Two of the authors there thought of ideas, and their ideas combined came to 1,000 Voices Rising, because it's so many voices from Africans living all over the world, different themes, different ideas.
Right. And where can we find this book? And you did mention during our pre-interview chat that there's another book that you put together.
Yes, Boda Boda Anthem and Other Poems. It's a book on the theme of Kampala City. It's another one we anthologized. We called for poems on Kampala City being a multicultural place, a place where so many businesses thrive and don't thrive. So many things happen. It's never a dull day in Kampala. And so we got poems from people of 18 nationalities, retired diplomats, 12-year-olds, poems reflecting the heartbeat of the city. And Boda Boda Anthem was the most recurring theme. So that's how the title came to be. Both books are at the Uganda Museum, the Uganda Society specifically. There are leading bookstores, Aristoc, Book Point in Village Mall. And we're taking some to Nakumat Book Fest as well this week. And enjoy.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Let's take a very quick break, and we'll be back with the Trivia Lounge.
What I found is when it comes to really successful mentors, there are a lot of people who are saying that they want to learn, but there's a big difference between those who say they want to be entrepreneurs and those who take action on it. So a lot of mentors, before they'll take someone as a mentee, they'll want to see the action. They'll want to see that you're serious, that you've invested your time. So before you kind of really reach out to someone and ask them to mentor you, make sure that you've taken the initiative to do what you can do on your own first.
For more amazing interviews, go to www.businessmike.com or sign up for our weekly newsletter by simply sending an email to subscribe@businessmike.com.
So welcome to the Trivia Lounge, Beverley.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and we're going to see what score you're going to get.
Okay.
Right, so the very first question is, which one of the following is Shakespeare's longest play? Is it Hamlet, The Comedy of Errors, or Romeo and Juliet?
Hamlet.
Yes, you're right. Actually, it is Hamlet.
I read it recently, and I was like, when is this play ending? I just reread it kind of to remind myself of great plays, yeah.
Right, 4,042 lines, that one.
And what's the shortest, if I may ask?
The Comedy of Errors is the shortest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a fluke, by the way. That was
Yeah,
really a fluke.
that's 1 out of 5. That's good. So the Mahabharata, this is an Indian poem, is actually the longest poem in the world. But how many words do you think it has? Is it 570,000, 930,000, or 1.8 million?
930,000.
It is actually 1.8 million words in that poem. I just had a quick look on Wikipedia. It's very interesting. It's about a war, and it has Indian mythology and things like that. So for anyone interested, it's unique. It's very interesting.
When was it written?
A while back. I'm not sure of the very date, but I'll put this in the show notes page, businessmike.com/Beverley. You can find that there.
Okay.
And you can have a look at it. This is the third question. On what date is World Poetry Day? Is it March 21st?
March 21st. Celebrated as Babishai Niwe. I should have mentioned that. And we have something as well. Can I mention?
Yes.
On Friday, 18th March, we're going to Mienga. There's a guest house called Blue Hummingbird. So we've been invited to have a barbecue and perform poetry with poets all over the world. And that's one of the events we're partnering with them. So Friday, 18th March, Mienga, Kironde Road, at Blue Hummingbird. Yes.
All right. That's 2 out of 5. Question number 4. Millions Poet is a reality TV show in the United Arab Emirates, similar to the American Idol, but for poets. Can you guess the amount of money that the first place winner gets? A wild guess.
Oh, is there no option?
There are no options on this one.
Oh.
Just take a guess. It's a lot. That's all I can give you.
$1 million.
It's actually $1.3 million for the first placed winner.
Oh, so is this international or for?
No, it's actually in Arabic, and it's apparently very popular in the UAE, so much so that it's surpassed football. Football is a very popular sport there, and the views they're getting for this show, it's sort of like American Idol.
It's called Millions Poet.
Millions Poet, yeah, it started in 2007 and it's been running since, but it's in Arabic.
It's okay, I just have to learn Arabic.
Yeah. Final question. Your book, 1,000 Voices Rising, has footprints on the cover page.
Yes.
How many are they?
Can I count?
No.
20?
Close, but not close enough. They're actually 17.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Something I'd have never thought about.
Yeah, well, you've done well. That's 2 out of 5, so well done to you.
I've learned a lot.
These are the final 2 questions. If you had a time machine, so basically if you could go back in time and meet yourself as an 18-year-old, what book would you recommend yourself to read? And what movie would you recommend yourself to watch?
Definitely Dead Poets Society.
Is that a book or a movie? I'm not
It's
sure.
a movie.
Oh, okay.
Robin Williams and Ethan Hawke. Robin Williams, died a few years ago. Ethan Hawke is still acting, Law and Order quite a bit. Because this book is a book that showed how art is so important and how parents all over the world are still controlled by patriarchy and conventional lifestyles, that much as they meaningfully want their children to do well, they are bound by traditional convocations, traditional jobs and lifestyles, not knowing that a child's artistry could excel and propel them to great places. And so it really focuses on that. It also focuses on a teacher who is very experimental, very deep, very complex as well, but creative enough to allow the children's minds to open enough to see how many options there are in the world. And so he was faced against a very, very conventional religious system. And so it's very important, because those are things that happen to us all the time. We're always challenged by tradition and culture. Yes, the book Mud Rights and Mildew, although it wasn't out when I was 18, is by somebody from Trinidad and Tobago called Edmund Narine.
Okay.
It's a bit like V.S. Naipaul. It's so funny. I think people from Trinidad and Tobago are just so funny. It's so funny. It's about a street, life in the street, characters. I don't like V.S. Naipaul's Middle Street, but different in a way. The funniest part, I'll never forget, there was a man, because Trinidad and Tobago is a third world country, there are many third world elements of humor. And so there's a man who used to make coffins, and of course everyone wants to make a difference. And so he made a coffin for somebody who had died, but the coffin did not fit the size. So what he did is he placed the body in the coffin somehow. So when they were opening the coffin, at the burial grounds to see, everyone was shocked. He had cut off the limbs and placed them by the head, each side of the head. That was the funniest part. I laughed at the reactions of the characters. That's, every time I talk about this book, that part, I just can't believe people can write like that. It was so funny, so memorable, and so simple. Yes, so those two definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Beverley, for taking the time to join us today. And once again, can you remind people where they can get in touch with you on social media or website, as well as everything you're doing?
On social media, it's Babishai Niwe Poetry Foundation. Babishai. I know it's a complicated name. Means creating, Niwe with you. So Creating with You Poetry Foundation. That's the name. On Twitter, it's at BN Poetry Award.
Right. I'll have all those details on your show notes page, which is www.businessmike.com/Beverley. So you can find everything we've discussed here, the poems, the clip with Kanye West, the books you've mentioned, and all that on that page.
But Kanye is a bit broke now, and as we're going towards being extremely rich and living in abundance, but the clip was very, very important.
Yeah, I'll just try and highlight that from a young age the talent was there. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Beverley, and all the best.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Business Mike podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to listen to more episodes just like this one, simply go to businessmike.com. I would love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions or feedback, you can reach me on Twitter at Daudi Mugabi, on Facebook at Business Mike, or email. That's daudi@businessmike.com. Don't forget, we have a brand new episode every Monday. And until then, take care.
I'd rather be